It was March 22, 1985, in a private Warner Brothers screening room in Burbank, California. 50 studio executives, producers and distributors had just finished watching Pale Rider, Clint Eastwood's new Western. The lights came up slowly. The room was silent in that uncomfortable way. That means people didn't like what they saw. Clint sat in the back row, as he always did, watching the reactions. He knew Westerns were considered dead in 1985. He knew everyone expected this film to fail. He also knew they were all wrong. Then a powerful producer named Richard Zanuck stood up, turned around to face Clint, and said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "That was garbage, Clint. Westerns are dead. You just wasted $6 million of studio money on a genre nobody wants. If I have anything to say about it, you'll never direct again." The room went completely silent. Everyone turned to see how Clint would respond to this public humiliation. Clint looked at Zanuck with those pale blue eyes, completely calm, and said 3 words that ended Zanuck's career: "Watch me work." This is not a story about Westerns or movies or even about vindication. This is about the difference between loud arrogance and quiet confidence, knowing your worth when everyone else doubts it, and understanding that the work always speaks louder than the critics. In 1985, Hollywood had declared Westerns commercially dead. The genre that had dominated cinema for decades was considered outdated, unmarketable, and financially toxic. The last major Western success had been years earlier. Test audiences rejected Western concepts. Studios wouldn't finance them. The data was clear and consistent. Modern audiences, especially the crucial 1835 demographic, had zero interest in cowboys, horses, and frontier stories. This wasn't opinion. This was market research, backed by millions in lost investments. Studios that had tried to revive Westerns in the early 1980s had lost fortunes. The genre was finished. Clint Eastwood had built his career on Western. The Dollars trilogy, Hang 'em High, The Outlaw, Hosey Wales, Pale Rider, would be his return to the genre after several years focusing on contemporary films. But everyone in Hollywood told him it was commercial suicide. His own agents advised against it. Studio executives said audiences had moved on. Even friends in the industry warned him, "Westerns are over. Pick something modern, don't risk your directing career on a dead genre." Clint listened to all this advice and ignored every word. He'd found a script he loved, a story about a mysterious preacher who helps a mining community fight a corrupt company. It was classic Western mythology, updated with moral complexity. Clint knew it would work. He just had to convince a studio to finance it. Warner Brothers agreed reluctantly, primarily because of Clint's track record and his reputation for bringing films in under budget. They gave him $6 million, a modest budget even by 1985 standards, with the understanding that this was likely to be a loss leader that would satisfy Clint's artistic desires, while hopefully not losing too much money. Their internal projections estimated maybe 10 to 12 million domestic gross, at best. Enough to recoup costs, not enough to be profitable once marketing was included. But Clint's films usually performed slightly better than projections, so they took the risk. Clint shot Pale Rider efficiently, as always. 37 days came in under budget, no drama on set, delivered exactly what he'd promised. When he showed the rough cut to Warner Brothers executives, they were professionally polite, but privately concerned. The film was well made, but it was undeniably a traditional Western at a time when traditional Westerns were box office poison. The studio scheduled a private screening for industry insiders, distributors, and key executives to gauge reaction before committing to a marketing strategy. This screening would effectively determine Pale Rider's fate. Richard Zanuck was one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood. He'd had enormous success in the 1970s, had strong relationships with every major studio, and was known for his aggressive confidence about what would and wouldn't work commercially. He'd been invited to the Pale Rider screening specifically because his endorsement could help distribution, and his criticism could bury a film before it even released. Zanuck arrived at the screening with several associates, all of whom shared his view that westerns were finished. They were attending primarily to confirm what they already knew. Clint had made a beautiful but unmarketable film. The screening began. Pale Rider played. The story of the mysterious preacher helping miners fight corporate exploitation unfolded with Clint's characteristic efficiency and emotional power. The cinematography was stunning. The performances were strong. The moral complexity elevated it beyond simple good versus evil storytelling. As a film, it was excellent. But to the executives watching, none of that mattered if it couldn't sell tickets. And westerns couldn't sell tickets. That was simply market reality. When the lights came up, the room was quiet. People looked at each other uncomfortably. The film was good, but good westerns still failed at the box office. Warner Brothers executives were already mentally preparing damage control strategies, limited release, minimal marketing, get it into theaters, and move on. Then Zanuck stood up. He was sitting in the middle section of the screening room, and when he stood, everyone noticed. He turned around to face the back row where Clint sat. "Clint," Zanuck said, his voice carrying clearly in the silent room, "I need to be honest with you. That was garbage." The room somehow got even quieter. Executives shifted uncomfortably. Nobody criticized Clint Eastwood to his face. It wasn't done, but Zanuck was on a roll. Westerns are dead. Have been for 5 years. Every metric, every focus group, every piece of data we have says audiences don't want this genre anymore. You just spent $6 million making a beautiful film that nobody will see. This is going to bomb, and it's going to damage your reputation as a director. Zanuck paused for effect, making sure everyone was listening. "If I have anything to say about it, and I do, you'll never direct again. Not after this failure. Studios won't trust you with their money once this thing tanks." Every person in that screening room was watching Clint now. How do you respond to being publicly told your film is garbage and your directing career is over? Most directors would defend their work, argue their case, maybe get angry, possibly even leave, but Clint didn't move. He sat in the back row, completely relaxed, looking at Zanuck with an expression that wasn't defensive or angry or even concerned. It was simply knowing, like someone who has information nobody else has. The silence stretched for maybe 10 seconds, but felt much longer. Then Clint stood up slowly. At 6'4", he had a physical presence that made people pay attention. He looked at Zanuck, then at the room of executives, then back at Zanuck. When he spoke, his voice was that characteristic quiet rasp that somehow carried more authority than shouting ever could. "Watch me work." 3 words. That was. Then Clint walked out of the screening room, leaving 50 executives sitting in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. Zanuck laughed, but it sounded forced. "He's in denial. This film is dead on arrival." Warner Brothers, having just watched their director publicly humiliated by a powerful producer, faced a decision. They could back Clint and risk being wrong along with him, or they could minimize their commitment to Pale Rider and protect their relationship with Zanuck. They chose a middle path. Limited release, modest marketing, basically exactly what they'd planned before the screening. If the film failed as Zanuck predicted, they'd contain the damage. If it somehow succeeded, they could expand. The word from that screening spread through Hollywood. Within 24 hours, Richard Zanuck had declared Pale Rider dead. Clint had responded with 3 words that sounded like delusion to most people who heard the story. Industry insiders took some thought Clint was foolish to bet against market research and Zanuck's proven instincts. Others admired his confidence, but expected him to be proven wrong. Almost nobody thought Pale Rider would actually succeed. Pale Rider was released in June 1985, in limited release, just 7. Warner Brothers watched the opening weekend numbers nervously. The film earned $4.2 million in its opening weekend. That was strong, really strong for a limited release. The per-theater average was excellent. More importantly, the audience response was overwhelmingly positive. Word of mouth exploded. People who'd seen it told everyone they knew. This wasn't just another Western. This was a return to why Westerns mattered. By week 2, Pale Rider had expanded to 1,200 theaters. It earned $5.8 million. Week 3, 1,800 theaters, $6.1 million. The film wasn't declining like most releases. It was building. Audiences were finding it despite minimal marketing. By week 4, Warner Brothers realized they had something unexpected, a genuine hit. Richard Zanuck watched this unfold with growing horror. He'd publicly declared the film garbage. He'd told Clint his directing career was over. He'd staked his reputation as someone who understood the market on Pale Rider failing. And it wasn't just succeeding modestly, it was becoming one of the surprise hits of the summer. Industry insiders who'd heard Zanuck's screening room declaration were now asking him about it. "Didn't you say that film was dead?" Some asked genuinely. Others asked mockingly. Zanuck tried to spin it. He claimed he'd been talking about the genre, not this specific film. He suggested the success was a fluke. He argued that his overall point about Westerns being risky remained valid. But Bimman knew what he'd actually said, and everyone knew he'd been catastrophically wrong. Pale Rider finished its domestic theatrical run with $41.4 million. On a $6 million budget. It was the highest-grossing Western in 5 years, and single-handedly proved the genre wasn't dead. More than that, it proved that quality storytelling transcends genre trends, that audiences will show up for films that respect them, and that market research isn't always right about what people actually want to see. The film's success meant Clint Eastwood's directing reputation was enhanced, not damaged. Every studio wanted to work with him now. He'd proven he understood audiences better than the data analysts and the powerful producers who claimed market expertise. The long-term impact on Richard Zanuck was devastating. His next film, released later in 1985, bombed. His 1986 film bombed worse. Executives who'd trusted his judgment before Pale Rider now questioned every prediction he made. If he could be that wrong about Clint's Western, what else was he wrong about? His ability to get projects financed declined. Studios stopped taking his calls. Directors avoided working with him because being associated with someone who'd been so publicly wrong was risky. By 1987, Zanuck had effectively been pushed out of major studio filmmaking. He continued working in independent production, but the power and influence he'd had in 1985 was gone forever. Clint never publicly gloated about Pale Rider's success or Zanuck's decline. When asked in interviews about the screening room confrontation, his response was characteristically brief. "Some people talk about what's going to happen. Other people make it happen. I knew the film was good. I knew audiences would respond if they got a chance to see it. One guy's opinion, even a powerful guy's opinion, doesn't change what the work is. But people who were in that screening room tell more detailed stories. They talk about how Zanuck's certainty was based on data that didn't account for execution. Westerns had failed recently, but bad Westerns had failed. Nobody had made a good Western with a major star and proper distribution. Clint understood that distinction. Zanuck didn't. They talk about how "watch me work" became legendary in Hollywood. Those 3 words represented a philosophy. Don't argue, don't defend, just do the work, and let results speak. It became shorthand for confidence that doesn't need validation. When young directors faced criticism or doubt, older directors would tell them the Pale Rider story. Let your work prove them wrong. They also talk about how Clint's calm response in that screening room revealed something crucial about power. Zanuck was loud, aggressive, certain. Clint was quiet, controlled, unbothered. Zanuck's confidence was based on past success and market data. Clint's confidence was based on understanding his craft and his audience. One was performing certainty. The other was simply certain. The film itself became more than just a commercial success. Pale Rider revitalized interest in westerns. It proved that genre conventions weren't the problem. Bad execution was. Other directors started pitching Western projects. Studios became willing to consider them. While the genre didn't return to its 1950s dominance, it survived when it should have died, largely because Clint made one really good film that everyone said would fail. Today, Pale Rider is considered one of Clint's best directorial efforts, and one of the strongest westerns of the night. It's taught in film schools as an example of how to update classic genres for contemporary audiences. The scene where Zanuck declared it garbage is taught in business schools as an example of how overconfidence in data can blind you to quality execution. The story of that screening room confrontation remains legendary. A powerful producer publicly declaring a film dead, a director responding with 3 words, the film becoming a hit, the producer's career ending while the director's career flourished. It's a perfect Hollywood story because it confirms what everyone wants to believe, that quality wins, that arrogance gets punished, and that quiet confidence beats loud certainty. The people who witnessed it firsthand say the most striking thing was Clint's complete lack of concern. He didn't look worried or defensive when Zanuck attacked the film. He looked like someone who knew exactly what was about to happen and was simply waiting for everyone else to figure it out. That kind of certainty can't be performed. It has to be real. Years later, someone asked Clint if he'd known Pale Rider would succeed when Zanuck was declaring it garbage. His response captured everything. I knew I'd made a good film. I knew audiences wanted something real, something with weight. The rest was just noise. People who talk the loudest are usually the least certain. I didn't need to argue with him. I just needed to let the film reach audiences. The work did the talking. And it did. $41 million worth of talking. Enough talking to end one career and elevate another. Enough talking to prove that sometimes 3 words, "Watch me work," are more powerful than all the market research and confident predictions in Hollywood. If this story of quiet confidence destroying loud arrogance moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that the work speaks louder than the critics, that data doesn't beat quality execution, and that sometimes the best response to doubt is simply proving them wrong. Have you ever succeeded when everyone predicted failure? Share your story in the comments.